Hello and welcome to Conference Showcase. I'm your host Gary Leland and I'm bringing you another conference session. Hello, welcome to Conference Showcase. I'm your host Gary Leland and I'm bringing you another session. Now if you found about our show on Facebook, YouTube, or another video sharing site, please check out my website at conferenceshowcase.com. It's the place to find all the videos that I'm going to record from all the conferences that I'm going to attend. Now, if you like this show, please tell your friends about our show. Now, in this episode, I'm bringing you a session from Podcamp Dallas, and it was held in October of 2012. Kind of late getting this out, I know. If you're not familiar with Podcamp Dallas, you really need to check out their website at podcampdallas.com. Now, in this episode, I'm going to bring you a session with Mark Rizzn titled Monetization. Let's watch it now.
This QR code will lead you to my show notes, if you will, some bullet points. I welcome, I don't know how long this will run, probably fairly short to the hour, so I'm relying on there being lots of questions. I see a lot of familiar faces, so maybe you guys can help me out. And just to briefly introduce who I am and why I'm qualified to say anything about this topic. My name is, as I said, Mark Rizzn Hopkins. I'm the founding editor at SiliconANGLE. We're an enterprise-focused tech publication network. We do blogging, we do video podcasting, we do some audio stuff, not a lot, but we have in the past. So, I mean, we just, if it's, you know, if there's a media format out there, chances are we do it regularly. So we just call ourselves a network rather than a blog or a podcast or a video network or anything like that. So what we've been really focused in on the last couple of years is something called, we call it the Cube. It's our live event-based tech coverage. We'll go out live to the events like VMworld or South by Southwest or EMC World, vendor events or technology events of various kinds, and we'll set up an anchor desk, much like you'll see a sportscaster booth at a football game or something like that, and we'll just do kind of like very, very similar to like a pregame or a halftime show. We'll talk to all the people that are there, the practitioners, the academics, the C-level executives, and just kind of give a vibe of the show to people that aren't able to make the event. And it's been very, very popular. We've been doing it for close to 3 years now. We're in our third year, and at this point we have well over 90 days. If you played it start to finish, all the content, we have 90 days of content out there on the network. So it's not only voluminous, it's very popular. We average about 6 to 8, well, between 4 to 8, depending on which year you're looking at, million unique views to our content a year. But it's not a volume game. I have played in the volume game before, and I've played in the niche game. I started out as just a regular blogger in the 90s before there was even content management systems. Got into podcasting very early on. Had a podcasting startup there for a little while. I got serious about making money with new media in 2004 and tried to make a career shortly thereafter. In 2007, was hired by Mashable as like employee number 6, associate editor over there. Really tried to head up their video work and push it along further there. And in early 2008, I was employee number 1 at SiliconANGLE. So that's just a little bit about me. Let's get into the top of the conversation here. This is all about monetizing media, and to understand what I'm about or how I can approach this. Let's talk about the philosophy behind the way I approach media. And I truly believe that you can't come at it and be successful if your goal is to monetize what you do. You can't be successful if you're not passionate about the content. First of all, you have to be passionate about what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're not going to make it through the lean months in the early days. But more importantly, you have to have a comprehensive approach to your content. You've got to think about the writing side of things, the video side, the audio side. What's appropriate for what? One of our hosts on our show uses the term horses for courses. Which is kind of a horse racing metaphor. Probably, I don't know why, it's not a very accessible metaphor, but what it means is that you've got different kinds of horses that run different kinds of tracks. sharper turns, barrel runs, quarter-mile tracks, and you've got to think about, what type of audience you're trying to capture, what type of niche you're going after, if you're going for a niche or if you're going for a mainstream audience. If you legitimately think you're going to have 500,000 viewers every month, that determines your monetization strategy. That determines how you're going, what media type you're going to use. And so with that in mind, just kind of go down the various monetization techniques that exist in the market. By the way, I actually tried to update my list a little bit with some specifics. I did a search for podcast ad network last time I was updating my notes, and the third result on the Google search result was a blog post I wrote in like 2007 at Mashable. So there's not a lot of new stuff under the sun, basically, when it comes to podcast-specific monetization. It's the same old stuff that has been around for a while. There's ad networks that function on CPA, ad networks that functions on CPM. You've got we'll get into more into that in a little bit, but there's also like general media monetization techniques, like a lot of newspapers monetize with classified ad systems or some sort of like crowdsourced self-service ad network of kind, just Craigslist basically with a different skin on it. There's multimedia ads, often known as those annoying autoplay things that you get from Google or from Gawker Media websites that try to get you to switch to IE9 or whatever it is this week. So, and then there's stuff that's specific to podcasting that there have been very successful in various cases. Crowdfunding comes under various names. Crowdfunding like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, that's the thing that's hot at the moment. There's also just this plain old PayPal donate button. If you've got a very fanatical audience, or very niche audience, or you have some sort of internet celebrity involved with your organization, crowdfunding can be very successful. It's helps fund Leo Laporte's network. I mean, you can go down. There's plenty of examples, but the common thread in many of these examples of crowdfunding works very well is that there's someone that's either become an internet celebrity or had some sort of celebrity status before they became a broadcaster, and cashing in on a large social net, saying, hey, give me some money, keep this thing going. It's kind of like the PBS fund drive method. So that's another way of looking at it. So the other way is paywalls that you can do with media that's often unexplored. Paywalls, again, this is a horses for courses thing, only going to work in very specific circumstances. If you're the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, you can probably pull this off. Some would argue the New York Times less so than the Wall Street Journal, because they have very, very specific, high-value content. Wall Street Journal's brand equity is built on the fact that they've, businessmen who read the Wall Street Journal are far more successful by X percentage than those who don't, blah, blah, blah. So they can put, $9 a month, whatever it is now, and people will pay it. Plus there's some data services that come with that package as well. So if you have some sort of unique data that you're collecting, I know for Gary does that with his sports network. He's capturing events that nobody else can, none that other people can get, but nobody else is doing it. And so he can charge for certain types of educational or event-based content because he's the only one there in that spot. So that is those are some, in my opinion, tried and true methods. I'm not the kind of guy that likes to stay on the tried and true path, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing the last 2 years at SiliconANGLE and what's worked for us. If you are following along in your book, it's you can scroll down to the 2 operations models that we have here, or you can, I'm going to kind of skip around here, but let's see. Yeah, so what we've been doing at SiliconANGLE is we have we started out just as 3 guys, 2 guys and a girl that were really focused on content. One of us had a lot of sales experience, but none of us really enjoys the sales process. And I think most of us in this room can probably identify with that if I just kind of had to venture a guess. We're content people. Monetization is a dry topic in general, but if you start getting into the weeds of sales tactics and Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, copies for closers, it's really it drives most of us batty. I can't stand the idea of cold calling people saying, can you give me money for my show? So with that in mind, we just spent and self-funded, we basically called up a couple friends and said, okay, we'll support you guys while you get on the ground when you launch this enterprise, and we'll see where it goes. And we got subsistence pay for a couple of years while we kind of figured out what we were doing, or for the first year we figured out what we were doing. And then we kind of backed into something that 37 Signals has been doing for quite a while. And that is we backed into the idea of creating media that supports a pre-existing enterprise. 37 Signals, if you're not familiar with it, is an organization that is famous for creating the products Basecamp and Campfire and a lot of other kind of startup-friendly productivity tools, subscription-based and whatnot. But they also kind of have the unique property of the company that most everybody in the company, at least last time I checked, is a blogger, and they produce very engaging content on their blog. It's I mean, if you don't read 37 Signals blog and you are in a startup of any kind, you should read the blog. It's really good stuff. But the point is that they're known for their products, they're known for their kind of expert-based consulting, and their business model is almost exactly like the display ad business, but there's two major exceptions. There's only one advertiser, that is their company. And the other thing is they're an exclusive relationship with that advertiser. So what happened with us is we met a company called Wikibon. Wikibon is a research firm, and we've kind of been in the process of merging a lot of our operations. We entered in kind of an exclusive arrangement. We're more or less the only media firm they deal with on an integrated basis. And they're the only research firm we deal with on an integrated basis. And if you know anything about kind of enterprise industry news, you can't have enterprise tech coverage without having high quality research analysts to go to for really mundane details that are important to the outcome of a story. So it's a very symbiotic relationship, but most importantly, they already had a business model that served them well, but they were having problems scaling it. The name Wikibon was not known in storage and enterprise circles. Oracle was not beating down their door waiting to give them some money. They were dealing with smaller players, still on the billion-dollar scale, but smaller players like EMC and NetApp. And when we were able to combine our blogging and video podcasting and live streaming mojo, we were able to amplify their expertise. I mean, this is old hat for most of you, I'm sure. You know blogging is great and podcasting is great because it amplifies your expertise, lets people know you're an authority in a given area. That's what we did for them. And because they had an existing business model, and we were able to support that, and we've just grown together, we've exploded. We've gone from 3 on our side, three employees on our side, and 8 employees on the research side to a grand total of, well, we're gonna hit 60 next month, employees between the two organizations and the spin-off that we spun out last month. So there's it's a wildly successful thing. The margins are much greater, or can be, I won't say are much greater, they can be much greater when you enter into an exclusive integrated relationship with a company that has an existing business model, or if you have one of your own. This can go both ways. That's just how we did it. So your mileage may vary, but that's the general picture I'm trying to paint for you. This is a model that works, and as long as you have an established product line or service line that you know you can deliver on and scale, then it's something that will have a far greater ROI than participating with any ad network of any kind, CPA, CPM, bolted on, self-service, anything. So that's part number one. I call that our operations model because it talks about how our business operates, but it also touches on the product and services side. The revenue model that we've worked with, that we've really pioneered, really in the last 18 months, but it's kind of been in the back of mind, is the underwriting revenue model. And this has existed time immemorial. PBS, Big Bird, Charlie Rose, underwriting is well known to most of us. PBS exists 60% of the revenue comes from underwriting from the private sector, 40% from the public sector. But for us, it's nearly 100% is underwriting. We have obviously made a great great success of this, because what we do, again, going back to what I was saying originally, we go to events. That's primarily what our coverage is based on. We going to events and covering conferences that are not necessarily the most exciting conferences in the world. People are clamoring to go to South by Southwest, of all kinds, music kinds. The interesting people all want to go to South by Southwest. I'll be kind and say it's a very niche audience that wants to go to EMC World. It's not, there's no rock stars there, except for the ones that are paid to be there at the end to entertain the rest of us. So they need amplification, and that's what we provide. So we enjoy talking about tech. We're such geeks that we enjoy talking about dry enterprise tech, and this is what turns us on. We're weird, and EMC likes that weirdness, and so they pay for us to come to EMC World every year we call it a sponsorship or an underwriter, and they pay for us, fly our entire crew out there. We have a gigantic, we call it a hypercube. It's a TriCaster Blackmagic live production rig. It's about the size of a dishwasher, and that costs a fair amount of money to ship out. I mean, it's an expensive operation, but they're like, this means so much to, our business interests are aligned so much that we're going to pay for this whole thing to happen. And we have essentially an EMC where we have a live event that we cover every 2 weeks. So we have a fairly robust and busy operation. Sometimes we'll have 2 events going on simultaneously. That's how underwriting works. Once there's always a rush to be second in line, right? So once we got the first couple penguins that jumped into the water, everyone else is like, I get it. I see the value. They're basically marketing us, and they're doing it cheaper than I can pay a creative firm for, right? And it's live, and it's real time, it's new media, blah, blah, blah. It just hits all the buttons with them. Basically, underwriting model fundamentally and psychologically hits a vanity button that exists in everybody, right? Everybody wants to think that what they do for a living or what their company does is the coolest thing in the world, and everybody wants to know about it. And when you bring media to that thing that they do, it kicks off things like CNN is covering us, or ESPN, or whatever, CNBC, whatever is the vertical pub that exists kind of in their mind as the archetype of penetration, cable news style coverage, or whatever it is that you're doing that around an event or an idea or a niche. It's attention to them, right? And you're the vehicle that brings that attention to what it is they do and brings that that coolness factor to it. And so that's why underwriting works. Is it you're basically they're paying for their own vanity basically, but it's for their industry and it's business aligned, so they can justify it on the balance sheet at the end of the year when taxes have to be paid. So let's see. I skipped around a little bit, so make sure I haven't missed anything important. Just briefly, because I've got this section here called "What's Changed Since 2009" that I sort of ran through pretty quickly. Here's why I'm a big fan of obviously I'm a big fan of what I do because I do it. Otherwise, if I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't do it. But a big fan of this type of business model over a lot of what exists out there is because at heart I'm a journalist, and the business models that I love to construct are things that preserve the ethos of journalism, right? The big problem right now, when we all see it if we read blogs or read the news, is that everything is attention driven, right? You've got Business Insider, you've got Demand Media, you've got AOL, you've got Huffington Post. I mean, these are just some examples of places where you can think of bloggers that are underpaid, they're content mills, and they're basically writing for the lowest common denominator, so you can get a lot of people in to click on whatever link, maybe click on a slideshow, give them 10 links, even better. And they're pumping up those page view numbers, and it's not journalism anymore. It's just, I don't know what you call it, it's link bait is the best word for it. And that, this dream that we all had, at least I had, when I got into blogging as a journalist or got into podcasting as a journalist, is that, this democratization of media thing is going to change everything. It's going to kill the big old guys that are screwing up. CNN's failing. Dan Rather doesn't know how to check his sources. Blogging, yeah, and it's not turning out that well. So what was clear to us when we founded SiliconANGLE is we had to come up with some other, there's got to be a third way to preserve the goodness of podcasting and blogging and these other types of new media, but not rely on page views as the metric and raw numbers. And so that's one of the main reasons why I like underwriting. Second of all is, for all the other reasons I mentioned before, it makes it as a new type of, everything old is new again, it's not new, but as a new type of way to monetize new media, it's definitely, it's got a shine on it still, and the flaws in the system haven't been exposed yet, so we'll see how it bears out over the next 5 years, but the biggest reason why these are better than page view, CPM or CPA or any other type of thing with a C in it, cost per anything, is you don't have to have 500,000 viewers to your show to be taken seriously by an advertiser. That's the very, very bottom line. If you want to do cost per action, which is what YouTube offers or some of these other services offer, where you've got keyword matching, cost per action, you're going to you're going to have to move so many. Trust me, I was at Mashable, I know. You have to move so many page views that it's not even funny. You're just in the business. You can never be better than Business Insider and Demand Media at moving page views. So my view is, why try? They're always going to beat you. They have it down to, it's Moneyball for them. It's just throwing dollars at the problem and arbitraging words. And on CPM deals, very similar problem. If you go down that list that I compiled back in 2007 on that Mashable post that you turn up in Google, and call every one of those guys, first of all, the ones that are still in business, a lot of them don't exist anymore, but the ones that are still in business, they will tell you, Federated Media, some of the higher end options at BlipTV, they will tell you that we would like you to have between 50,000 to 500,000 unique viewers a month before we can give you the really high end deals. And here's the thing, a high end deal in 2009 versus a high end deal in 2012, two completely different things. In 2009, a high-end deal was 40 CPM. Fantastic. You could almost make ends meet with that. Today, 13 to 18, unless you have a massive, massive audience. 13 to 18 CPM barely pays for your production costs if you have a well-produced show. So you either have to skimp on your production, which isn't fun. I like toys. I like to buy cool things to do production with. So skimp on that, or just have massive, massive audience, which is hard to do if you've been skimping on your production. So that's the basics of what I have to offer you guys. I'm some of you that are familiar with my organization, some of you that want to know more about it, please ask me questions. I will go drill down on anything that I've talked about so far, either company related or monetization in general. I would love to answer some questions. Anybody? Yes.
So, where would you start today if you had an asset that had a lot of views, but basically, what would you do today if just starting over?
If I was starting over,
to make money on.
So the way that I would probably do it not too differently than how I did it this time, because when we started SiliconANGLE, it was probably the worst time to start a blog, because it was in that era where TechCrunch and Mashable and Business Insider were already dominating. And if you're starting a tech blog in a crowded space like that, you either got to have lots of funding or lots of free writing. And so the sad fact is that, well, okay, so let me amend my statement. Blogging has to be fundamental to any operation, first of all. Text is indexable. Audio is not yet where it needs to be. Video is getting there. So there's a lot of transcription services that exist within YouTube and some stuff that you can pay for that's relatively affordable. So you might be able to get away with just producing video and have it be indexed, but blogging is fundamental. And so if I were to start over today, blogging has to be a team effort. You have to have multiple bloggers because one person can't keep pace with 60 posts a day. which is what most of the high-end competitors will do in any major niche that exists. If you're starting a new niche, fine, just you and a buddy and do some video and some blogging. You got to have a text component to it though, because Google has to find you. Google searchers have to find you somehow. The proviso to that is if you're funded, if you have some money behind you to kind of kick this thing off, there are some really good and affordable transcription services out there that will let you use YouTube as almost a proxy for blogging. There's a service that we use called Speaker Text that essentially comes down to $30. Is it $30? Hang on, I did the math here. I think it's $30 for every 12 minutes of video, roughly, if you buy it in volume, which is fantastic, and the turnaround is within 24 hours, which can be suboptimal. But you can take those scripts, and they're time-coded and everything, and you can plop them into your YouTube video, and you'll pop. I can tell you this right now, because we do a daily production every morning, Mark Zamora and Kristen Folletti, and we do a production every morning, and we pop in some really good headlines, some really good keywords in the description that indicate what the story's about, and we'll pop up at the top of Google search results sometimes within the hour of it being posted. And adding a transcript to that only increases your longevity in searchability. So those would be the two ways I would approach it. First of all, I would approach that sort of a problem.
You put the whole transcript in the video description?
No, what I tend to do with ours is if we put the whole transcript in the description. I put the show notes in the description, which are in our case are fairly well produced. We have a couple people working on the writing, which is mostly just interview questions, not so much on the answers. But on the transcript side, they actually have a upload area for it, where it's you can upload a time-coded or a straight text version into it. And if you hit the closed captions button on certain videos, you can see the hilariously incorrect text to speech or speech to text version of it, or you can, if you upload your own, it's ostensibly more correct. So that's where we throw ours in. Any other questions?
Do you see that there's a parallel between the beginnings of television media, radio media, and the type of monetization you do for podcasting, where in the beginning a lot of television shows were underwritten by soap companies like the soap operas and stuff like that? You see a parallel between that happening with early stage media?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that the difference between now and early stage media, when airwaves were the vehicle for it, is we live in an age of excess because things are amplified by technology, and the technology that we just take the CPM example. I mean, that ad networks are nothing new. Ad networks are one of the oldest things under the sun. It's just a group of smaller players getting together to use collective bargaining power to get some ads and whatnot. And you see what that led to when you look at BI or TechCrunch or HuffPo or any of these other major players now, is they quickly. It's just like with Dig or any other kind of social engineer, people learn to game the system, right? And so technology exposes the flaws much quicker in new media than it did in old media. The cycle is shrunk down. It took decades for the flaws in ad networks to be exposed the first time around, and it took decades for them to figure out how to even form an ad network after underwriting model was the original idea, and then let alone the flaws in it. So technology has shrunk the time to finding the holes in a theory. I think that would be the key difference.
Do you see a consolidation of podcasting networks the same way like Federated and others rolled up blogs?
I think that's already started to happen. podcasting networks, Ellipson did quite a roll-up back in, I'd say, '06. They rolled me up, and they rolled up a bunch of other smaller players. And then a bunch of them, if you're talking about podcasting specifically with relationship to audio or video, like with audio, I think that market is more or less settled down now, because the most successful audio podcasters do direct sales of varying kinds. Either they're Adam Carolla, they're big enough. Leo Laporte, he's big enough. He doesn't need an ad network. An ad network would actually take money off of his bottom line. Leo Laporte, because he would walk into any podcast network, and he would be 95% of the podcast network's traffic. He's just that big. And so the most successful podcasters, I think, are all kind of doing direct sales, but they're also dealing in high volume. So there's really not great representation for the little guy in audio podcasting. It's the sad state of affairs, and it's been like that since '07. I've actually run the course of my editorial. I'm no longer angry about it, because I was so angry about it when I first noticed the issue. I don't have anything left in me to complain about. But yeah, I think the little guy in podcasting, you've got to be proactive. You've got to represent yourself. You've got to be creative with your monetization. If you're not doing this if you're trying to make this anything more than a hobby, you've got to be very creative in your monetization.
What are some good examples of direct sales that you've seen?
So, I don't know if this video still exists, but I mean, it was, when people say Gary Vaynerchuk is exciting, that sounds a little bit trite, because, but this one actually inspired. I tried out what Gary Vaynerchuk said, and it works. And so if you do a search for like how to make money with my video, or make money with my podcast, and put Gary's name in there, it's just like this 8-minute video of him actually landing like 5 sponsors for his show on the podcast. And it's just cold calling, right? But what he did is he did a Google search for, I guess wine or whatever it is that he picked as his topic that he was going to do. I guess it was wine. It makes sense, right? And he went to the sponsored search on the side of Google, and like, okay, these are people that are paying for advertising. Okay, they're a lead now. And he would click on the thing, and he just worked up a short script for himself. Of course, he probably worked on it a little longer than he did in a podcast, but he got his own little script. Hey, I'm Gary Vaynerchuk. I do a podcast. I've got a lot of people that watch my stuff, and they like to buy wine. How would you like to pay, buy a $500 ad or whatever it was he was selling? So cold calling. You can't underestimate the power of cold calling. And in essence, what we do with our stuff is cold calling. Whenever we launch a new kind of show, our process at SiliconANGLE is to, Mark was involved for the last year. It's a laborious process sometimes, but we do a pilot, we do auditions, and we do a pilot, and we do this whole thing. It very much represents like old media, but once you get the show down, a pilot episode of the show, we go to people that have sponsored things in the past to us, EMCH, PIBM, say, hey, look, this is the thing we're going to try to do. If you believe in it, throw some money. Here's what the production is going to cost. If you don't, then we'll go on the next guy. Those are just a couple examples of some creative ways.
There's also merch. There's a lot of shows that sell merch and with their logo on it, that sort of thing. And there's also a lot of shows that they have a private area with their shows on it. So
Like a paywall.
yeah, a paywall. So you get the first show free and that sort of thing.
It's like WTF with Mark Maron. Like he has like the last 50 episodes that they go back, and you have to pay like a minimal fee to actually get access to like the rest of the 250 episodes he's already done.
Right. It's sometimes it's a hybrid model of the things that I've described. When I talked about paywalls and donation, crowdfunding, whatever. I mean, you can mix and match to your pleasure on these things. Keith and the Girl has kind of a mesh between a paywall donation model that's kept them podcasting for years and years. So they've been around since I've been around.
Question, sorry, I'm not quite familiar with that. What exactly is a paywall?
Okay, so paywall is a term that refers to some sort of prevention of seeing the full feed, or like if you go to the New York Times, I think they have it set up now where you can browse around for a little bit, but like after your 5th article or 10th article or something like that, you get this login screen. And the login screen will say, okay, create an account. Okay, now pay us some money, subscribe to the New York Times, now you can read our blog posts. So that's what the term means. If I'm using words that make sense only to me, please ask me questions. I get lost in my own little bubble sometimes.
So I'm not sure if you said it. You said CPM, CPA. I don't know if you identified what those acronyms stand for.
Yeah, I probably did not. CPA is cost per action. That is typically associated with like affiliate programs. So I think it's GoDaddy's program, and some of the other domain registrars will have a CPA program for podcasters where you get a code and you say, okay, sign up to go to GoDaddy, sign up using Rizzn as your code, and you get 5% off, and then I get some money, and blah blah blah, whatever. Don't use that code; it doesn't actually work. But CPM stands for cost per milli, and that's cost per thousand. That means that's a dollar amount that an advertiser or an ad network will give you per 1,000 people that view your show or go to your webpage or whatever. And then there's usually some sort of restrictions and qualifiers. Is it a unique person, or is it and they really don't kind of do non-uniques anymore. It's always got to be unique, either unique visitors or unique page views. Sometimes, so you'll see unique CPM, CPM PV, or CPM, or UCPM for unique CPM. So it varies from ad network to ad network what the terminology is that they use, but that's in general what you're going to see.
Besides Kickstarter, is there any other big crowdsourcing sites?
That's a good question. Indiegogo comes to mind. Kickstarter. Mark, you know some of these. What are these? What's some other ones? Are there any more that come to mind?
There's one more nonprofit one that just started. It's called Pure Charity, and that one's about to launch here really quickly. But that one's designed specifically around nonprofits.
One thing you need to know about Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're the two biggest ones, but Kickstarter is you have to get your full funding or you won't get any of the funds. Indiegogo, will actually give you, like even if you don't make, like say you're going for 7,000, you only make 6, you will get the money, but they take a larger portion of what, the share than what Kickstarter does. So like you say Kickstarter, you make the full thing and they only take 20%. Indiegogo, if you don't make the full thing, you'll get like they'll maybe take 30% or something like that.
So with those kind of like those types of crowdfunding sites, it's kind of, in my experience, it's fairly. I would not use them as kind of an ongoing thing. I would make them project based. In fact, I think there's restrictions on some of them that they have to be at least around a project, not an ongoing fundraising drive. So if you're looking for crowdfunding that maybe doesn't use one of these services, just an ongoing donation, or there's a number of things that work with like a PayPal button that like will give you kind of like a fund drive type thing, like you see whenever like the YMCA is trying to do a blood drive, they have a little thermometer. I've seen some widgets that look like that, or you can just go to the money vendor of your choice and put a donate button.
There's even something called like chip in that you can use.
Right. Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of like really cool.
And that's just good. The money's going directly to you. Basically, you're routing around the Kickstarter project, basically. But something like chip in, you can say, hey, like we've used it to buy birthday presents, a big birthday present for somebody that's expensive, and then everybody can chip in a little bit of money. But you can use that for your listeners and have, or your audience, and have them, have that constantly running, basically.
If you really wanted to go crazy, there's an iPhone app called PayTap that you could actually use for that. We could really piss off some people by using it for purposes in no way intended for. Let's all do that now.
Yes. There's another one. I can't remember the name of it, but if you go to Evil Genius Chronicles, every page on his blog post has, unless he's removed it lately, which I don't know. I read his RSS feed, but he had this thing where it was you click a button. It was like kind of a vote up button, but your readers would put basically $5 in an account every month, and they would go to various websites that they like, and if they like the post, they'll put some money into a tip jar type thing. They're paying, the readers pay the same amount every month for all the content they read, but they just decide who it goes to through this little thing. Hasn't really taken off on a wide scale, but it's something that works for, if you've got a very focused and recurring audience, it's something they could probably adopt in a way that his Evil Genius Chronicles listeners and readers have.
That's the really cool thing about a lot of the, especially with Kickstarter. Amanda Palmer is a musician, and she was looking for $100,000 to start to do her next studio project. She ended up raising $1.2 million just from her fan base. So the sky's the limit on a lot of that stuff.
It's interesting, like some people say, I want to raise $20,000. There was a movie called Indie Game the Movie, and they were trying to film it. So the first one, they went over their thing, and they were looking for like $50,000. They made like $100,000. So then they came back again to finish up, but they still went over the 24-hour period. Tim Schafer's a video game creator, and actually broke the $1 million mark. He's trying to make a small game. It's based on it. Some might not make, but then sometimes people are so interested in this product, they skyrocket and they're able to do a lot more with the game.
Yeah, I watched that movie too. Great movie. Yeah. Just watched it the other night.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah, thanks. And again, I'm kind of new to this, so I'm in no way any kind of subject. I'm kind of the old guy in the room, but with the funding models, I mean, if you look at them as your investors or your customers, is there a payback period for that money?
So you're talking about
rather
like,
than just free money, yeah.
Free money.
It's
in
free
terms
money.
it is.
So with Kickstarter, this is actually.
I mean, that would piss me. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm looking at it from investor-customer
Right.
model because of your long.
Yeah, but if you're a
Piss me
fan,
off.
you're different than an
So-
investor.
I don't agree. I mean,
This
I'm
is
a.
nothing like VC funding or angel investment.
Yeah, okay.
Expect something, this is basically people chipping.
Okay, well, that's a different thing. I'm just, I always look at ROI and.
They also give perks, like you spend this much,
Oh,
like
yeah.
Like the funding drive,
Like,
yeah,
when you get a movie, they would actually, like, if somebody's trying to do a film, they'll actually, like, for like, you grant $200,000, they'll actually fly you out to the premiere.
Okay, great, yes, great.
No, there are perks that they give you for certain, like,
Yeah.
funding levels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost exactly like the stuff they show on PBS every year or every 6 months to make money. Get a tote bag.
Yeah.
But you determine what the perks are.
Okay, great, thanks.
And actually, really quick about what she just said, there are a lot of creative ways to do the crowdsourcing kind of thing, and an example of one that Penny Arcade did was they said if we reach as a community this amount of money, we'll remove all ads from our website. So that was coming up with creative ways to reward your fans, I guess, is good and key to crowdsourcing.
Agreed.
So earlier in your talk, you talked about the necessity of having a blog,
Right.
Because of the search engines looking for text and picking up text and indexing that, and then you guys were also talking about PayPal donate kind of funding model. So you're going to talk about how you integrate an audio podcast with your blog site, with your website, and what's sort of optimum in those areas.
So I can tell you what's optimal right now, this is the one area that's even more, the only part of new media that's more exciting to me than monetization is the distribution models, because it's constantly changing. That is the one thing that I could give a speech on today, and tomorrow most of my information could be irrelevant. What I would, to give you specific advice, I would have to hear a specific question, but if you're talking about crowdfunding of some kind or with a PayPal button.
Where do you put your PayPal button?
Where would you put your PayPal button? In general, if you want people to see it and understand it, you've got to give them clear directions where it is. Visually on the page, I'm not personally a designer. Where?
If you're doing an audio podcast,
if you're doing,
put a PayPal button, that means then that you've got to have a website or you've got to have a blog.
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on what kind of website you have too. Yeah. Above the fold, you don't want to, I'll just give you some general guidelines, because it varies from website type to website type, but you want the least amount of clicks between them and the purchase or the donate. So, and you want them, don't make them scroll, don't make them have to click behind a couple pages. Put it on every page if applicable, and
build it into the theme.
Yeah. And don't put it in the blind spots. So you've heard of some of you may have heard of this thing called ad blindness. which is a constant fight if you do CPM monetization. There are areas of the computer screen where we as users have been trained not to look because we know only ads ever show up there. So keep it in places where content might go.
Now, I was going to say though that I know what you're talking about as far as like the PayPal button. Let's imagine that if you do have a podcast and you don't necessarily have this big giant web page you want to have to go through the time to create.
Exactly.
Well, I do a little bit with affiliate marketing, so I know that what you can do is you can although when you do PayPal, it has an option for a button. It also has an option for just sending it via email. It'll give you a link. So like, let's say that your show is called ABC Show, okay? And you want people to donate. Well, what you can do is create a domain name called donate2abcshow.com, and then have the link to your PayPal donation button be redirected to that domain name. So whenever you do your podcast, you can say, hey, if you like our podcast, just go over to donate@abcshow.com, and you'll be able to donate there. That way you don't have, that way you'll still be able to get the
user enters that URL.
Right, and it redirects them to your donation page for your particular show. And you can set it up to have where they can donate whatever amount of money they want to.
And then donation page, do you generate that, or is that auto?
That's generated by PayPal,
Excellent.
which means they host it, so you don't have to worry about hosting it the page yourself.
Thank you.
Great example. Perfect. Doing my job for me. I love it.
That's one of the other things about considering placement for buttons on your website. Do not be afraid to be redundant. I did a website for an author selling his book, and even though I have a page specifically for the book, giving the description and where it can be bought and everything, I have a button on every single page with just the book cover and by me on every single page. So that's the other thing, is just make it redundant, make it visible, because the more they see it, the more they know where it's at. They're not going to hunt for it, or as he said, they're not going to have ad blindness.
So here's one other thing, and this is when you get away from CPM or CPA or any other type of display advertising, banner ad or text ad of any kind, you can think way outside the box of design conventions. So because so many of our design conventions are limited to trapping it's all about trapping the user. I hate that. I hate trapping the user. And then think like Steve Jobs. Love him or hate him, he was UI UX focused. He wanted a beautiful user experience. So if you have a funding model that doesn't rely on a display ad, whether it be something that YouTube has inserted into your stream, or something that you've got through like a podcasting network, or anything, or a Google ad or a federated media ad or anything like that, if you're not doing display ads, get crazy with your design, but make it user focused. Think about what does the user want, and that frees you up with all kinds of ways of drawing the user into different places. It's refreshing when you come to a site. I mean, think about it. If you come to a site without ads on it, it's like a sigh. Oh, man, all right. It's brought to me by HP. Okay, got that out of the way. All right. What do you got to say? That's how the user thinks. What else? We've one more.
That's all right. I'm just microphone. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made attempting to monetize?
I tried to start my own ad number one time. That wasn't fun. I mean, it's biggest mistake I ever tried. So I was going with display ads. So it was successful from I made some money point of view, but it was the amount of work that I put in for the amount of money that I made was pretty low. So the deal was that I joined an ad network. I won't mention the name because he's kind of known in the business. I don't want to talk bad about him, but I joined an ad network in 07 or something like that for podcasts, and it was one of those, I don't know, GoToMeeting or GoDaddy type ads that they had me run at the beginning of the show. And I was guaranteed a CPM for every 1,000 people that listened. I got $5 or $7 or whatever it was. And I said, you know what, I could just market the crap out of my show for less than $7 and arbitrage the ad, and As long as the ad is playing, that's what they're paying for, right? So who should care? And now plus I get more listeners. It was a great idea. I got up to 300,000 listeners a month in under 2 months by paying for marketing for my own show. But it unfortunately wound up tanking the and it wound up tanking the ad network. Like the ad network didn't have, they were assuming I would not use that much inventory. I was wound up being like 90% of the entire network's inventory. So they had a hard time paying me. So, which showed me where the ceiling was in podcasting in terms of ads for this, these display type ads, CPM ads. It's very low. There's nobody's expecting you to make any real amount of money with your podcast ads in an ad network. So that was, I guess, the biggest mistake. It was very much a learning experience, though. Getting close to lunch, so I'm guessing no more questions means everyone's hungry. Okay, I'll call it quits. If you guys have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'll be around for most of the day, if not all of it. Depends on when my boss, aka the wife, calls me home. So yeah, track me down, ask me questions. Thanks.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this week's session. Make sure and check back for future video sessions from Podcamp Dallas, as well as other sessions that I attend. Now, before I go, I want to share something with you. I really am kind of excited about this. I've started an e-magazine for the iPad. It's really doing great. Now, I have no background in publishing at all, but I found it a snap. Now, if you've ever thought that you'd like to publish an e-magazine, but you really don't know how to do it or where to go, you may want to visit Magcast. That's the service I use to create my magazine. Like I said, it's easy. Actually, it's almost foolproof. You can see for yourself, though, at magcast.fastpitch.tv. That's my affiliate code, of course. But that's all for today. So until the next episode, this is your host, Gary Leland, saying goodbye, and thanks for watching.